as Molbo. Berlin in February is a city caught between breath and shiver. The air tastes like cold metal, and the streets wear a thin veil of frost, as though the city itself had stayed out too late the night before. On February 7th, 2024, people gathered on Oranienstrasse, drawn not by the warmth of a cafe or the pulse of a club, but by the pale light seeping through the frosted windows of Galerie Kepler. Inside, a small exhibition honored a man whose voice once filled neon-lit discos from Munich to Milan, whose songs still lurked in the dusty corners of thrift store vinyl bins. Molbo. The name was almost new, sleek, strange, glamorous. But behind that single word was Nils Künneth. Born in 1961 in a cramped flat on the east side of Berlin, raised on rationed sugar and black market radio waves. He'd been lanky and restless, the kind of teenager who would cut class to hum melodies into a cheap tape recorder, convinced someone, somewhere, would understand. In the late 80s, during the twilight of Italo Disco's reign, Nils found that somewhere in Milan. He arrived with nothing but a duffel bag, a leather jacket, and a battered cassette of his demos. By the end of the decade, Molbo had his first hit, Luci della Notte, a shimmering track, dripping with synth, heartbreak, and Nils's velvet deep voice. For a few years, he was untouchable. In the exhibition, a looping projector spilled his old videos across the gallery's white wall. There was Molbo in 1989, hair feathered, jacket studded, eyes heavy-lidded like he was always about to tell you a secret. In another, a stage swam in laser lights as he leaned into the microphone, singing as though the night was endless. Some fans came tonight in sequined jackets, others in modest winter coats. One man, gray-haired with a scar on his chin, stood apart from the crowd. His name was Jacob. He had been Molbo's sound engineer during the Berlin sessions of '93, the year the singer's career began to quietly fracture. He wasn't made for the quiet. Jacob murmured when someone recognized him and asked what Molbo was like off stage. The silence between gigs, that was the hard part for him. He'd sit in his flat, cigarette after cigarette, staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring. When Italo Disco's glitter dimmed in the '90s, so did Molbo's calls. He released 2 more albums, darker, stranger, but they slipped past the mainstream. In Berlin, he retreated into smaller shows, underground venues, where the crowd was close enough to touch. He loved it there, Jacob said, but you could see him wrestling with the ghost of the man he used to be. By the 2000s, Nils had stopped performing entirely. He lived quietly in a flat in Kreuzberg, writing songs no one heard. The neighbors knew him only as the tall man with the slow walk, who fed the stray cats and sometimes left handwritten lyrics in the communal mailbox. The cause of his death in December 2023 was never publicized. The official statement from his niece mentioned a peaceful passing, but whispers in the music community hinted at a long illness. The exhibition's final room was dim, with a single spotlight on a glass case. Inside lay his old Roland Juno 106 synthesizer, the one that gave Luci della Notte its cascading shimmer. Next to it was a neatly folded leather jacket, cracked at the elbows, smelling faintly of tobacco. A small speaker played an unreleased track, just Nils's voice and a lonely synth line. The lyrics were in German, Lichter gehen aus, doch ich bleibe wach. The lights go out, but I stay awake. Jakob stood there for a long time, listening. Around him, people whispered, some smiling at the memories, others wiping at their eyes. Outside, the city went about its cold, indifferent business. Before leaving, Jakob took out his phone and snapped a photo of the glass case. He didn't need it to remember. He could still hear the warmth in Nils's voice, still feel the way a packed dance floor would sway like one body when Molbo sang. But he wanted proof, for himself, that the man had been real. As he stepped back into the winter air, the muffled sound of the unreleased track followed him. For a moment, Berlin seemed softer, the frost sparkling under the streetlights, as though the city itself was keeping time with a beat only Nils Künneth could have written. And somewhere in the static between old frequencies, Molbo was still singing.